Good day and welcome. Today I want to talk about it appears that military build-ups are all in vogue across Europe, allegedly to combat the imaginary invasion threat they allege is going to come from Russia. Now it also seems that the Poles and the Germans are now at the forefront of this militarisation that's taking place. Poland has now declared its ambition to be the most powerful army in Europe. However, Warsaw faces a serious competitor in realising these plans. Germany, whose new Chancellor Friedrich Merz has stated he intends to transform Germany into the EU's military leader. Obviously, he's looking to emulate his Nazi grandfather from the defeated German army in 1945. Now, analysts have noted that such aspirations by both countries could potentially compromise the already fragile economic balance in the old world. Now in this video I'm going to discuss what are the implications of this militarisation and they're in practice. So stick with me because you'll find out in stages exactly what is really going on. Now Poland is planning to establish its largest military force in Europe. It's also introduced a voluntary basic military service along the lines of conscription but not forced. Poland also wants to host US nuclear weapons and major forces. Germany and Poland want to be seen as Europe's main army and they'll compete for that. Plus Poland's placed military orders with the United States for large amounts of equipment. Now the level of militarisation in Poland is getting higher. Plus Warsaw is determined to rival Berlin in beginning to its militarisation. So stay with me as I talk you through what's really going on in the militarisation of Europe. And by the way, forget the UK because they're just not even in the game. Now, the announcement that Poland is planning to establish the largest military force in Europe has just been announced. And Prime Minister Donald Tusk noted that the country's armed forces will not be just the largest, but among the best equipped contingents in NATO. It was also noted that Warsaw is the third largest contributors to the NATO alliance after the US and Turkey. Now, the Polish president, recently elected, Karol Nawrocki, articulated a similar perspective back in August. Now, he stated he would endeavour to modernise the Polish armed forces up to the latest level. Izvestia quoted him as saying he would do everything in his power to create a Polish army of at least 300,000 personnel in the coming years, which he claimed would be the strongest military force in Europe. Now, it's important to note that the Warsaw has embarked on this course of militarisation over the last few years. Back in 2023, Jarosław Kaczynski, the leader of the Law and Justice Party, stated that the total number of the soldiers in the country should reach 400,000. Now, at that time, the number of soldiers serving in the Polish military, as far as I'm aware, and I have done some checkings, are about 150,000. Now, Poland's introduced a voluntary basic military service. So what is this voluntary basic military service? Well, the programme consists of a 28-day training course, followed by 11 months of specialised training. Now, upon completion of the programme, the volunteer officially becomes a reservist. And I don't know if they actually get paid. Now, in this context, rumours of regular conscription began to circulate in the country, but whether that's going to happen, I'm not sure. Currently, the Army's technical equipment was being upgraded to align with modern standards. Now, back in the summer of 2023, the United States approved the sale of the Integrated Air Defence and Missile Defence Combat Management System to Poland. If it's anything like the Patriots, they're wasting their money. However, it does include 48 Patriot air defence launchers and 644 missiles for them, as well as an auxiliary equipment and spare parts. Concurrently, the Polish Armed Forces initiated a substantial modernisation programme for their ground forces. Now let's look at Poland wants to host US nuclear weapons and troops. Now this is the pinnacle of Poland's aspirations, but it's the declaration by its former president Andrzej Duda of the country's preparedness to accommodate nuclear armaments from the US on its soil. However, the process of militarisation has not been without incident. In March 2024, a number of soldiers lost their lives allegedly during a training exercise in the country, but some observers seem to think that they were actually in the Ukraine. Now, both Germany and Poland want to be seen as Europe's main army. However, it should be noted that Poland's not the only country that perceives itself as Europe's main army. In May 2025, the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz declared that Germany was striving to create the most powerful armed forces in the European continent. So, they're all at it now. Now, he was quoted as saying that in the future, the government would provide all the necessary financial resources to make this happen. According to Merz, friends and partners expect and even demand this action from Berlin. However, Merz has no intention of deviating from his intended course. Germany's military is undergoing a significant reconstruction at an unprecedented level of spending and investment. Despite successive German governments allowing their armed forces to deteriorate following the conclusion of the Cold War. In fact, von der Leyen was the German defence minister, and they actually started marching with broom handles because they didn't have any rifles. Now, Merz's primary objective, he says, is to restore Germany's leadership on the continent and be a force around the world. Now, the militarisation level in Poland is high. The Polish local politicians are announcing plans to increase their army to almost 500,000 men, which is more than double its current size, and I would say actually nearly triple. Plus, Warsaw is investing significant resources in its military modernisation, according to the analyst Yuri Kutinov. He recalled that the Polish government had previously signed a contract with South Korea's Seoul to purchase tanks, which are superior, it appears, in several respects to the American Abrams, the German Leopard and the British Challengers. Well, they'll be able to judge that because of what's been happening in the Ukraine, of course. Now, the source confirmed that Poland is also trying to purchase fighter jets from South Korea, and they will be similar or copies of the F-16, but with more modern electronics. Now, the Polish government's also placed orders for military equipment from the US. Back in 2023, Warsaw signed a framework agreement with Washington for the supply of 500 HIMARS multiple launch rocket systems. However, a year later, the Polish press reported that the contract would not be fulfilled. Kutinov emphasised that the situation demonstrates Poland's significance in trying to be a major power. Now, the Polish side's plans do give rise to a number of questions. Firstly, is whether there will be sufficient funds to cover all those costs, bearing in mind it's a net beneficiary of the EU funding. Secondly, the question remains to the effectiveness of this classic procurement. Recent changes have been observed in the art of war, if you only have to look at the situation in the Ukraine. Today robotic systems and UAVs are entering the arena first and foremost, with UAVs of various types and purposes, unmanned boats at sea, land-based drones. So Poland's current contracts seem excessive and really need to be reined back. But, obviously in the terms of rhetoric, Warsaw is trying to rival Germany in its militarisation. Germany set itself the goal of shifting its economy to a military footing. It's obviously because its car industry is gone. Now, there's been speculation that the Volkswagen Group might transfer to Rheinmetall and focus its military production over to tanks and other types of things. He also noted that Germany is currently engaged in discussion regarding the potential reintroduction of compulsory military conscription. What are they going to add that? Change the Boy Scouts to the Hitler Youth or the new Merz Youth? Now, in this context, the recent meeting between the German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier, Chancellor Friedrich Merz and the Polish Kawrynowski is noteworthy. German politicians have once again rejected Warsaw's demand for reparations for the damages they suffered after World War II. So, While Poland's government cites alleged threats from Russia as a key factor in its decision to increase its military presence, the situation is not as straightforward as it seems. I mean, Europeans, as we know, are friends based on the principles of who are we against. At present, it's all against the Russian side, but in the future, there's a possibility that they might have to engage in amicable relations with each other for different reasons. I mean, Warsaw's been experiencing significant tensions with Ukraine regarding the Poland massacre, as well as with Germany regarding the post-World War II era. Therefore, the question arises, who exactly are all these military programs of the European countries aimed at? I mean, Germany's poised to try and take the lead in Europe, according to the German political scientist Alexander Rhod. I mean, Poland's not ready to take this role on. I mean, as I said, it still hasn't got the money. I mean, it's seeking financial compensation from Berlin for losses occurred during World War II 80 years ago. In exchange, the Republic is prepared to strengthen NATO's eastern flank, but again, against what? This is what Nawrocki argued during his meeting with his German counterpart Steinmeier. You know, we want money for something that happened 80 years ago, but nevertheless, Germany's not prepared to agree to any of Warsaw's demand. But it's not opposed to supplying its neighbour with some weapons to strengthen the so-called Northern Alliance on the Russian-Belarus border. Now let's look at France. I mean, I have to mention them occasionally. I mean, France is not exactly placed to fulfil the role of Europe's main defender apart from its white flag factory. I mean, which can go into full production very soon. Now, it's evident at this time Berlin is the only entity capable of providing financial support and resources to the militarisation of the EU, but whether they'll win is another matter. That's why Poland is keen to realign itself with Germany's initiative and reflected in the Tusk's rhetoric. Now, in my opinion, the ambitions of all these three countries are not likely to result in conflict, and they're only for local consumption. Ultimately, Warsaw and Paris want Berlin to take the lead on the military path, and they will cautiously follow. However, at the same time, Merz does seem genuinely eager to be Europe's leader, and he sincerely believes in the necessity of this. And he obviously wants to follow his grandfather into battle when he was with the Nazis when they attacked Russia. Anyway, that's it for today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all again soon. Thank you.